Just before we get started, right, I just wanted to tell you that I've got a new series that's now available called Truth Seeking. That's TROOF. There's a link to it in the link tree below. It's me and a comedian from the UK called Jimmy Budd just discussing various conspiracy theories. We'd love to know what you think about it. We'd love to know that there's people listening. Alright guys, I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. And this week we're going to be blurring the lines between race and colour. They come over here, they take our women, they get them pregnant in ways that we could never even imagine, mate. They have little to nothing to do with most of their children, They replace us in our places of work. They've spent the past couple generations taking over the media, seeping into television, infesting the brains of the world's population with ideas of acceptance and blind obedience. Decades spent mixing up different races until we get the perfect, complete being. Now, when you mix up most colours in a pot, what do you get? When you don't know something for certain, it's a composite of shades of what? If you say anatomy to a middle-aged woman, what's the first word that comes to her mind? Grey, mate. Grey to them all. Mix up some colours, you'll normally get grey. The world's made up of varying shades of grey. Middle-aged women loved Grey's Anatomy when that was about. And if you mix up different races, seems like you get greys no matter what. You mix a reptilian with a human, you get greys. Mantids with a humans, you get a grey. Mix a tall white with a human, you get a grey. So I figured we should look at these creatures that seem to be everywhere and nowhere. Factually speaking, it's a bit of a grey area. Obviously, if you've not worked it out now, we're talking about the greys. And let's have a song. This is Alone With Me by Hobson. The literal grey area where these guys supposedly stem from is what we refer to as the Orion constellation. Possibly, and in all honesty, my favourite star constellation. I've always found it weird, innit, how it's always seems to be in the middle of the sky, like we're being forced to look at it, and how it always feels like it's a bit closer than the rest of the stars because it looks so much bigger than the rest. Now, a lot of people seem to say that the greys originate from the planet known as Zeta Reticula, but I've also found people that suggest they're actually from the solar system that has developed around a star called Betelgeuse, which, weirdly, it isn't a word that's got a red line under it when you put it into Microsoft Word or on the internet using Grammarly. So maybe there could be a little bit of truth behind this one already, straight off the bat there, like they know the word exists. Now, if these things were made by aliens, Microsoft Word and Grammarly and the internet and that, right? If that was all made by aliens, of course they're going to put the fucking home star system on there. Like, because Betelgeuse is spelled Betelgeuse, right? That's not a fucking word. Zeta Reticula, that comes up as a word that accepts them as known words. They're accepted. Yet if I put a capital letter and then, face plant the keyboard and pull it back again, that doesn't mean that it accepts that as a noun, or is it a proper noun? I think it's a noun. Just a general noun. It doesn't accept it, so they know that they're words. Anyway, either way, right, on their original planet, the Greys, they pretty much fucking ruined it, mate. They decimated the whole thing with their constant need to create better and better technology. So have they brought that better technology to us? Is that what they're doing? Now this suggests that they were somewhat blinkered or that they had poor vision, which is kind of ironic when you take into account that they've got fucking massive eyes. A look that, sort of coupled with their spoon-like heads and grey skin, it is a look that's become iconic, and it's loved and enjoyed the world over, isn't it? Like, you think of a little green man, what do you think of? You think of a little grey guy with big eyes, But now they'd never feel that love, though. They would never feel the love from us, because according to scientists and historians, greys are completely devoid of all emotion. They apparently eradicated it from themselves over their span of life on the surface of Zeta Reticula, but maybe their emotions got the better of them when they were forced underground to survive after destroying all of their plant life. Maybe they started to feel just a little sprinkling of shame, Or, some sense of pride was tarnished and they were like, we've got to fucking get that back, mate. Fucking hell, And now personally, on a personal note, I believe that they developed into a whole new species whilst living underground. Now, I can't find any evidence for that, but I do think that's what happened, because that would then explain the massive eyes eyes, an evolution that we mostly witness on Earth for our nocturnal species, for things that want to see in the dark. So it makes sense that they would need larger eyes to be able to continue thriving in the dark. And they must have thrived for a while, innit, because they're now spread all across the known universe, at least according to some experts, Now, I was wondering, though, if there's a possibility that they are the old inhabitants of Earth. There are beliefs, right, that they're the future inhabitants of Earth, not as in like the conquerors and they're going to take over, but as in they're us, just of the future, like the Goobacks, if you like, in South Park. Well, it's easy to use South Park references, innit? We've all seen it, we all know what it is. So I tried to see, right, if I could find anything on Earth that resembles them, or would add to my theory of us constantly evolving as a being. In the same way that in Pokemon, Charmander is one creature, Charmeleon's another, Charizard as well is a totally different creature. They're all got different traits and that, but in reality they all are actually the same creature somehow, which never really gets explained. So maybe it's more like Digimon, where we start off as one creature. Say we start off as a single-celled organism, deep down in the sea, and we develop into a human. Then again, we don't have to imagine that. That's actually what happens, though, innit? We start off as two single-celled organisms, an egg and a fucking sperm, right? That's what happens. So who's to say that whatever our consciousness is can't turn into something else? Like from this point here, we can become a grey, which can become a reptoid, which can become a Draco, which can become a winged Draco, which we'll get into a little bit later. Just teasing you, just teasing you. We don't want to ruin anything for us. So, because our lives as a sperm cell, that's incomprehensible, innit? We can't remember that. Just like how to most, other than me and you listening, it'd be unimaginable. It's like imagine becoming another species, like a whole new species entirely. Like once whatever we deem death happens, like maybe they exist in this other plane, greys, and whatever we are is actually just shifting from one dimension to another. So we're not humans. Maybe we are this sort of living consciousness, and we're going to move from living in these humans to the next dimension up, which will be greys or whatever it would be. Now, there used to be beliefs, right, that aliens or the bogeymen, the Fae, and extra-dimensional entities, which I always get a mention, that they would enter or appear from cupboards or wardrobes, which you might remember me mentioning in Truth Seeking last week, if you listen to that on Threshold FM every Thursday at 7. But what if that's how we just perceive it, So we see them coming out of doors, and they realise that say the humans see a vagina as a portal to the world almost, So, like, I know that the baby, spoiler alert though now, spoiler alert for anyone listening, but I know that the baby can't be made without the penis going into the vagina, and out of the vagina, and into the vagina, and out of the vagina, and then back into the vagina maybe like 5 or so times, but a lock can't be used without the key, if you get what I mean. So they both make a complete mechanism, and back in the day, right, I bet the lock and the key were both made by that same blacksmith. So what if there's some level of scientist or creator in the lower dimension that's learnt how to create whatever's in a sperm cell and whatever's in an egg cell that mixes together to create a thing that we define as sentient? That can't be out the realms of possibility, innit? I hope I've not lost anyone there. That all seemed a bit fucking like airy-fairy and not in a way, but do you know what I mean? Like maybe someone in these other dimensions has figured out a way of creating something that means that they can then make this thing, which then becomes us, but in turn actually just becomes them, but they can never quite aim for it. But, I said realms of possibility there though, but, sticking with realms, could that be why they've got the massive eyes though? Do you know what I mean? Like maybe they've got the greys have these massive eyes to allow them to perceive various realities or the worlds that are within other worlds. Anyway, we have gotten a little bit lost there. So there is a species on Earth though, right, that resembles a grey. So we're talking about single-celled organisms, and a small organism that does resemble the grey that is on Earth, that kind of ties into all of this, is called a giant ostracod, which isn't like a long neck fish, right? Because I know that's probably what people are thinking, because that's what I kind of assumed it to be from the name. But it looks like some tiny form of crustacean, which, if you remember back all the way to the episode I did about shrimp, I did prophesise about this, about the aliens living down in the sea. Now, these creatures themselves, these exist about 2 kilometres beneath the surface of the Earth, of the Atlantic Ocean, should we say, which does kind of tie them in with Atlantis as well. But what if Atlantis was never truly lost? And what if we just lack the brain chemistry or scientific apparatus to perceive the world that exists, 2,000 metres below the surface of an ocean? And maybe that's why there are waves, the wakes of waves, they kind of look a bit like TV static, innit? And plus, if you go deeper and deeper down into the oceans, it's all pitch black. Or is it so that we can't... Well, it is to us, innit? So... is it that way so that we can't see, or did it just happen so that we can't see it, and it seems completely empty apart from, fucking mental-looking fish with, millions of teeth and light bulbs on their heads, or these weird shrimp creatures? But what if we can pass through that because we don't exist to it, and then to the shrimp and to the fish, we're the equivalent of their ghosts, meteorites, or whatever other myths and made-up things you can think of? One thing, right, that uses the veil of nighttime and, the cover of darkness, though, there's a sexual deviant, a pervert. And could that be why some people believe the first Grey was brought to Earth through a portal? Like the portal that was supposedly created by Aleister Crowley when he was exchanging bumholes with his sex magic partner Neuberg, and they met that spiritual being that at the top of my head I can't remember the name of. Anyway, let's have a song, and then we'll have a look at the more, I guess, esoteric interpretations of where the Greys actually come from. This is House of Games 2 by Locksmith and R.A. the Rugged Man. I try to make every week that I do kind of feed on from the last week or a few weeks before, just to try and give this a bit of, I guess my uni teachers would say, a narrative, a little story to it, if you like. And this one, this week with the Greys, kind of does lead on from last week's show about Nazis, because it takes place in 1946. I mean, no other links apart from the time frame and the fact that I'm about to talk about a rocket fuel scientist. What I'm going to talk about, though, now, which I don't think you'll ever have heard of. I mean, I hadn't heard of it, and I fucking love me alien gear. So this is about the Babylon workings ritual, and from what I can gather, it also took place much like the Aleister Crowley and Neuberg fiasco. This also took place in a desert, surrounded by sand in the Mojave, which I think the Mojave is actually now home to Area 51. So that's kind of weird. But instead of a wily magician and his unusual apprentice slapping balls in the desert sun, it was allegedly the founder of Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard, and a guy called Jack Parsons working together in a magical sense. I'm not saying that in like the poetic, biblical sense to create life in front of their very eyes. Although they were trying to create life in front of their very eyes, but not in the sense of they were trying to impregnate one another. Now, many people claim it was a failed experiment in it, but I've also found people that say that they succeeded in being the first people to actually welcome an elemental into the material world. Now, again, another little callback here. Elementals, if you remember them from, I think, the Gnome episode that we did ages ago, the Gnome stuff, I think they were classed as an elemental, or we at least, I know they were in me notes because I went back into them for this, but they're another thing that are associated with the Fae or the fairies or that sort of creature. The elementals. The elementals are almost a way of categorising these other creatures, if in a sense. So this kind of solidifies my hypothesis that, because obviously this isn't a theory, cause it's not based in fact, because I'm just making it up. So this is a conspiracy hypothesis coming from me, for those of you that aren't aware, But it solidifies my idea that aliens of modern day, the fairies and the fae of folklore, and ethereal entities like the jinn or the demons, they're all of the same ilk. Like they're all like it's a kind of like it's a way to explain something that we can't explain, or to name a creature that exists and uses a form of telepathic. That was a weird way to say telepathic, wasn't it? Telepathic power. This because I'm trying to think so far ahead and my notes are scratchy. But it uses like a form of telepathic power to to present itself in a way that can be understood when taking into account societal norms of the period. So what I mean by that there, just because I got a bit stumbled, didn't I? By telepathic power, I mean maybe these creatures that we saw as fairies, and before that we saw them as demons, and we saw them for a bit as ghosts in like Victorian times, I guess. Now we see them as aliens. Maybe they're the same thing. But imagine, like, maybe, like, let's explain it as, like, they're all Wile E. Coyote, right? In the Looney Tunes. But Wile E. Coyote is trying to catch Roadrunner. And it wants to, so it dresses up as a female Roadrunner. Wile E. Coyote didn't really dress up much, though, did he? Only really to try and get, like, to try and trick other people. Bugs Bunny! Bugs Bunny's a better one. But we'll stick with Bugs Bunny, it makes more sense. Bugs Bunny would dress up as a woman to try and trick Yosemite Sam. It's still Bugs Bunny, just it's Bugs Bunny in a dress with a bit of lippy on, you know. And then in the next scene, Bugs Bunny might be dressed up as a hunter to try and scare Elmer Fudd away, but it's still Bugs Bunny. But Elmer Fudd's seeing another hunter because Elmer Fudd would accept from another hunter the information. Oh, there's a hunter here. He's saying nothing's here. All right, fair enough. I trust the hunter. Yosemite Sam was a bit maybe less likely to believe another pirate, but. Or was he a gold digger? I think he was a prospector, one of Yosemite Sam. But he wasn't going to believe another prospector because they're just trying to take his profits. Whereas he will listen to a woman because he wanted to get his end away. Do you know what I mean? So they present themselves in a way that is acceptable to the viewer. So the viewer back in the day was understood the idea of demons from Christianity, or the jinn from other ideas, you know. They understood the idea of fairies and the fae and gnomes and elementals. Does it make sense? I'm hoping that makes sense. I don't want to keep going round in circles on that. But the whole point of the Babylon Workings experiment was to get a woman to give birth to the whore of Babylon, which seems really weird, innit? But I can't help but wonder if it's just a way that Christianity has taken something and then assigned negative connotations to it. But I mean, I'm not 100% sure. And I know that having sex on a beach is weird because sand's pretty abrasive, and once it's in your shoes, like, your shoes are ruined. So if you've managed to get that sand in, you know, in your foreskin, your fanny or your arsehole, then you must be a total write-off, innit, you know. But I think it's weird at all to try and make a child, and for you to want that child to be known as the whore. Whether it's the whore of Wythenshawe, the whore of Devon, the whore of Lincoln, it doesn't matter. The whore of Babylon doesn't mean that it doesn't make it better. I mean, I think Babylon was an entire country, so, you know, kind of impressive in a way to be known as that. A title's a title, I guess, but to think that at conception that I want me kid to be called the whore of this, it's fucking weird, mate. But maybe this could all be part of some form of psyops, like a psychological operation that's going on at the moment, making people think about child sex trafficking and Epstein and other pedos. Now, I'm not saying it makes the children whores, but using word association, a trick used by psychologists, so-called scientists, it's easy to see how this could all be part of an intricate plan to bring this, what should we call it, mystical being into existence through sheer will, and I guess it does that. Anyway, possibly, you know, by making people associate things like this, they could, together, right, it could change the world's perception of the creatures currently known as greys from unsexy grey people with no genitals to possibly quite sexy redheads, you know, who are mad for the dick. Do you know what I mean? Like, they'll literally bend over backwards for you. Like, aliens that up to now been quite helpful, innit? But they're not putting out as much as what they used to, it seems. Like, I think the fairies used to put out a bit, but the aliens don't really put out a bit. They just sort of abduct you and extract your sperm or your eggs and do their own thing in a test tube. But if they could pretend to be, you know, a good-looking woman or a good-looking man or whatever, You know, you could argue that the perception of the Fae as baby stealers was improved by having aliens impregnate women on spaceships as a science experiment. But now, with the big sexual awakening where you can be attracted to every man and his dog, you could conceal these creatures in the real world in the way that succubi and incubi were said to inhabit the world in ancient times. It's, you know, in plain sight, just bent over round the back of Weatherspoons, hands under ankles, ready to receive the seed of a human in order to create a new version of whatever the new type of tall grey would be. Anyway, this Jack Parsons guy seemed to be big into his sex magic from what I've heard and read. So he seemed to always be cracking one out onto these sacred parchments as well, I've heard, or holding sacred parchments in order to give them power whilst he's wanking. So what if this is what computer technology is? Phones, tablets, computers, all made possible from technology that many believe was gifted to us by extraterrestrials. So what if these creatures were able to seep into the mind of a scientist or an inventor to create computer chips from sand? But realistically, it could have been made from anything because everything is just made from atoms. Atoms that we categorise then into different things to make the world easier or in order to limit our power in the world or our understanding. But anyway, at a base level, it's all made out of atoms. Something that may have been understood by the creature that guided Crowley through his life, because as some of you may know, it's rumoured that the depiction of the creature he said was his guardian angel was exactly the same as what we now refer to as a grey alien. But it was understood by these beings, right, that everything is anything, and then it can be anything because it's all atoms. So maybe they thought, this planet's got an abundance of sand, this reality's got loads of this stuff, we'll just show it here out of sand, or pick it up out of sand, click me fingers, here's a computer chip. Or maybe they showed the scientist how to make chips from sand because they kept getting pulled into this world by perverts shagging on sandy dunes. So maybe they thought it was just something, everyone did. Or just because it was there, maybe they thought, this is where they come to create life. They come to create life on the sand. I'll show them how to create something out of sand. What I'm saying is that the sand is like the bailiff's foot in the door. They're on your property now. You've invited them in like a vampire, but they can't stay because the link wasn't strong enough. But by teaching perverts something like silicon chips means that it's all inevitably become associated with porn somewhere else down the line, because obviously these don't experience time in a linear way. Which is exactly what happened. We all now have little portals in our hands that access porn in order for us to relieve our leaky tips and give power to whatever mobile phones really are, if you was to believe in all this magic stuff. In the same way that people reckon you'll fall in love more with her if you make eye contact when you come. Maybe by staring at a phone whilst you ejaculate, it's made you bond with it, giving that phone power. Like how it said that some modern day magicians will masturbate while staring at the goals or to-do list. If you're enjoying the show, mate, go to my website, www.worldaroundyou.com, and try the books, mate. Try the books, you might enjoy them. There's How to Date an Antique Table, A Lover's Guide, which is a book about how to date an antique table from a lover's perspective. It's got chat-up lines, pick-up lines, fucking dating tips, where to find a nice antique table to bring home, for your mum. Then I've got Uneducated Guesses, which is the first book I ever wrote, which is a load of big words I don't know the meaning to. I just broke them down and tried to work it out and illustrated it. And then we've got the newest book, More You Know, which is a book of fake facts, mate, all illustrated. I think if you've enjoyed this, if you've laughed at any point during this, you'll probably enjoy them. They're about £2.50 on the website, and sometimes they're reduced. It said that L. Ron Hubbard, had a vision of a woman riding an animal, which seems to coincide apparently with a tarot card and with other depictions of the Whore of Babylon. Supposedly, though, this happened whilst Jack was cracking one out in the Mojave to try and invoke, quote-unquote, Babylon. Now, Jack then came back and went on about something called Liber 49, which sounds kind of German, which was a document that, in all honesty, I can't remember anything about. I've just got Liber 49 written down, and I remember he either thought it up or remembered it or found it. Anyway, Ronnie Hubbard, he described his vision of the Whore of Babylon in the same way that Billy Joel described the woman in his song Always a Woman. I mean, not word for word, but he said, She is flame of life, power of darkness, she destroys with a glance. She may take the soul she feeds upon the death of men. Compared to Billy Joel's, she can kill with a smile, she can wound with her eyes. She only reveals what she wants you to see, and it goes on, but there is a lot of similarities there. Now, I think the song's just a rewording of the L. Ron Hubbard quote. Now, have you ever wondered if that's all that music is? I mean, I don't mean the stuff that's made by a group of mates in a shed and that, and things like that, but the famous songs that reach the radio, and especially the ones that get played over and over all the time. Surely they could easily be magical incantations, or if not magical incantations, maybe just a way of getting a person to accept a new way of thinking and perceiving the world because it makes you sing along, which means you've then heard them words coming out of your mouth, so you start to normalise whatever concept you're singing about. Even if that isn't magic, surely it's a psychological trick. And I know I keep bringing up psychology, and that's because I'm determined to show you how Carl Jung's death fits into all this esoteric stuff about greys. There was a document, right, found in 1945 by a bloke called Muhammad al-Saman, consisting of 13 documents called the Nag Hammadi, N-A-G, new word, H-A-M-M, M for mother, A-D-I. The Gnostic texts written in about 300 AD, or I think 300, 400 AD, around that time, with a couple extra Gospels for the New Testament and a bunch of other historical documents. Now, Gnostic beliefs tie in with a lot of conspiracy theory because it lends itself to David Icke's theory that the whole world itself is an inversion of reality. Now, Gnostics believe that the God Christians currently worship is actually an evil deity, whilst there's this unseen deity known as the hidden God, which is actually the good deity. And I'm not going to go into Gnostic stuff, we may cover that another time, but these documents, right, that were found in a jar underground, they were found, they had the stories connecting how the guy found them. Supposedly they had stories about a jinn and some blood feuds, but anyway, one of the documents was gifted to Carl Jung, and it's believed by some that his death was a direct result of owning the document. Not in the sense that it was cursed or out like that, nothing like hocus pocusy or weird, but because someone wanted to either keep it a secret or keep it quiet. So why was it gifted to Carl in the first place? Was it gifted so that he could implement its teachings into the science of psychology? Or was it so he could use his understanding of psychology to start people believing in greys? The rest of the story here of Jack Parsons is interesting, but completely unrelated to greys and aliens. I mean, someone should definitely make a film about his life. It touches on Scientology, aliens, religion, archaeology, gangsters because of the way he dies, rockets and rocket fuel, and the court case, so there's a little bit, it's mental, a lot of potential. There's something for everyone. I might cover him in an episode, but we've gotten pretty lost in the Mojave here, which, as I said, fucking Area 51's there, so keeping it kind of make it sense, and that's kind of a link. And speaking of links, this is Inside Job by Russ. So getting back into the grades, right, we've got two types of grey. We've got the short grey, and we've got the tall grey. The short greys seem to be the more natural, or at least the closest to the original grey, whereas the tall greys are thought to be grey-human hybrids. And it seems like the greys are managing upwards as well. They create these humanoid hybrids with their own DNA in order to have them oversee the day-to-day operations of the shorter greys. These grey-human hybrids make the perfect floor manager. So I don't know if you've ever worked in a big shop, but they're less intelligent and seemingly incapable of free thought compared to their shorter counterparts. Now, the shorter greys make up the workforce, and I would say they seem that, I would say they're happy with it, innit? But obviously they're not, because they're completely devoid of all feelings, so they couldn't give a shit, really. The workforce, right, though, they're more intelligent, as you'll probably be aware if you've ever worked anywhere with other people. And realistically, though, personally, I think that's how it should be. I'd like to think if I was going to hire someone, when I'm older, or I end up with the business gets bigger or whatever, and I have to take someone on, I really hope I had the money to be able to hire someone who's a lot smarter than I am, because what's the point of hiring idiots unless you just want to be able to lord it over them? You want problem solvers, innit, not people that just follow orders and run into obstacles rather than running around them or jumping over them, or, you know what I mean? Now, there's another race of greys that we do know about, and that's the large-nosed greys that landed in New Mexico at Holloman Air Force Base. And apparently, there are even video recordings of when some high-up military personnel had a meeting with some similar aliens in 1971. But unfortunately, I haven't seen the footage. Now, we touched a little bit on hierarchy a minute ago, with the middle management, things like that, with the tall greys are in charge of the short greys. But there's a lot more to it than that. It seems like the Society of Greys takes on a complete multi-level hierarchical structure, with the winged Dracos right there at the top, as far as we're aware. But then, you got to bear in mind that our shadow government is still at the top of us, but the Draco reptilians are in charge of them. So, could there be someone or something above the Dracos? We may never know. I've heard that there are rules at ITV to say that you can't discuss or show illustrations of reptilian aliens on telly. So, if they don't want us seeing them on This Morning, then they probably don't want us knowing they themselves have a boss or someone that they kick up to, because it's not going to look good, is it? It's not going to make them seem as intimidating, I guess. Even though they would still be fucking scary as fuck, if, do you know what I mean? But then you think, you've still got a boss, you're scared of someone else. So then you're immediately more scared of whoever they're scared of, no matter how scary that person is. Now, on the next rung, let's say the next rung down from the top, are a non-winged variety of Draco, described as some as slightly robotic, but described as everyone as the brawn of the operation. And I'm not surprised, mate, because they often exceed 7 feet tall, they're weatherproof, and they're built like brick shithouses. There are other levels as well, and I can't remember the exact structure of the societies. As far as research shows, the Greys are at the bottom of this hierarchical ladder, but they're above us as far as I'm aware. We do know, though, that the Greys are very, very deceptive. Like, they'd lie through the teeth if they had mouths, but they've no need for teeth, though, because most Greys take in nutrients by absorbing liquids directly through the skins. So, what if we have deodorant on Earth so readily available now, so that any Grey that is living on Earth, possibly in disguise, or just holidaying on Earth, can absorb nutrients and still eat? It'd explain why there's so many mad chemicals in it that we spray into the open holes on our skin in order to plug them up. That's the big they, tell us to stop sweating, use it to stop sweating and that. But the hybrids could be using them to get some nutrients from them. Still eating food, because the children's films have taught them all how to blend into society and use their bodies like other people are using their bodies around them. Maybe that's why some people take such big shits, though, as well. Maybe they're hybrids. The food just passes straight through them. Or those people that can just keep eating and eating but never really put weight on, they could be hybrids because their body doesn't use the food up to use anything else. But if they start spraying themselves with loads of deodorant, suddenly they start getting fatter. Do you know what I mean? Or the big fat people, they could actually be the hybrids, but maybe they never had VCRs growing up and never saw the hints in the films, so they never realised that they only need to eat to pretend when they're in public, but in private they should be going to town on themselves with a bit of a roll on. What if that's what sewers are for, though, right? Because greys take on nutrients via rubbing liquids on the skin, right? And we've all got toilets in our house that take our piss to fucking God knows where. Now, it's widely believed that greys survive off of human vital liquids, and piss is just your old blood, innit, mixed in with whatever you've been drinking. So maybe that's why they have different tasting water around the country coming out of the taps and that. It means that they can bottle up fucking different types of piss, if you like, more iron, more vitamin C, more vitamin A, I don't know. We believe it's the Romans, innit, that gave us sewers, but we also believe Romans were the greatest war machine to ever exist. So what if the Greys have used their hypnotic technology to make us think that what took over most of the world were Romans, when in fact the Romans were aliens? And that's one of the ways that they control us. They have a network of hypnotic technologies spread throughout the world. A network, like a web, a worldwide web, if you like, that spans the entire world except for certain parts of Cornwall and the Scottish Isles. Thinking about that sewer stuff, though, again, could that be where the stories of sewer crocs come from, mate? Crocodiles, right? Crocodiles are reptilian, innit? Maybe that's why we tell people there are reptiles in the sewers, there's crocodiles in the sewers, don't go down there, there's crocodiles, don't go down there, there's gators. Or maybe it's so that we know subconsciously there's a little bit of information there to tell us that
reptiles or reptilians actually live off of our sewage. Shampoo's a weird one, I know, isn't it? Like, why flavour it or scent it? Because you just wash it straight off anyway. It just gets flushed down the plug hole, mate. That kind of adds to my idea that they're just marinating us, though. I've always thought it's weird that we just accept that we will rub, literally fucking handfuls, palmfuls of chemicals onto our skin as close to our brains as humanly possible, even though that we know our skins are pretty porous. I can't even imagine what it's doing to us, mate. Maybe that's why some homeless people come across as mental, though, because they're not showering in it as much, And if they are washing, it might not be with shampoo and conditioner, meaning that those chemicals aren't in the brain to help them properly take in whatever this fucking hypnotic web is simulating for the rest of us in the world around us. Instead, they see it from a different angle. Kind of like when you lift up the 3D glasses at a film and you just see that the film's just all blurry without them. Maybe shampoo and conditioner are our 3D glasses for the real world. Other people believe, though, that the Greys, along with their other reptilian counterparts, are actually nourished by literal human life force. I'm not overly sure, though, how that would happen, but I guess if a heart can give off different electrical pulses that can be sensed by, other creatures like sharks, again, something of it that lives in the ocean, like when we were talking before, then maybe they can pick up and use these vibrations, or possibly, it could be simpler than that, and since they can take in nutrients via liquid, that gets rubbed onto the skin, maybe they can also absorb gaseous substances too, except they'd be hard to sort of focus on and suck up in that, if it's just in the air. So that's why they have to keep the world in a perpetual state of fear, so that they can just walk around and absorb all these like pheromones in the air. Could that be why we used to fucking pollute the world, mate, like we did in the Industrial Revolution before the aliens as we know it? Maybe them chemicals in the air kept the aliens at bay, or was a way to feed them whilst not impacting on people's mental health as such. It's said that the Greys magnify their mental field in order to control us, and in some descriptions that I've read, it seems like another way to sort of describe the Holy Spirit. But it also sounds like the internet in a way, or mobile phone signals, or radio waves. Could that be what big buildings actually are? When you look at some skyscrapers, right, they don't look real, innit? They're oversized, and a lot of them look like they don't have enough windows for the amount of floors that we would imagine to be in them. Could they just be concealed radio masts, like the big sticks outside fast food restaurants with the illuminated logos on them? Because they're disguised phone masts, aren't they? Maybe that's what 9/11 was, mate. Maybe that was a human attempt to destroy one of the largest masts in the area in order to be able to make a crack appear in the network. Maybe this network, if referred to by the alien-run media, right, maybe that network is actually known to us as the ozone layer, and that's why we're told you've got to protect the ozone layer, you must protect the ozone layer, but really that's the aliens making us protect their own neural network kind of thing that controls us. Maybe it's so, it could be a double bluff, them telling us not to use deodorant anymore because it's damaging the ozone layer, but really they want us to accept using deodorant so that they can feed themselves with the deodorant. Maybe it's so that they can use our bank accounts to track who these hybrids are. Maybe it's just the humans, using banks and bank accounts, and that's why banking's so important, and they're using, non-mainstream media to make people turn against banks. But maybe banks are good. Banks could be the heroes, because they'll be able to track the alien hybrids by finding out who's getting through 10 bottles of deodorant a month, so that a secret organisation can either wipe them out, or so that the alien overlords can come and take them and have them work for them. Now, it could be that there are a variety of personalities, though, amongst the aliens, specifically, we'll stick with the Greys, because it'd be literally fucking racist, wouldn't it, to suggest that all of the Greys are the same. Maybe there are a group of rebellious Greys that work to allow as much human freedom as possible. There's a story that's told through the story of Enki and Enlil and the story of free will in the Garden of Eden, innit? It's believed that by some anyway, that half the Greys are hell-bent on world or intergalactic domination, and that half of them are kind of tolerant of Greys. So that's not exactly saying they're happy with us being around, but they tolerate us. Like how you tolerate a nest of spiders in the summer because they're going to keep the flies down as it heats up, but I suppose you're probably going to get rid of those spiders when it starts to get colder and those spiders are looking for somewhere comfy to snuggle up in the winter. But what if what if this is just all a nest for the greys, like Earth, a place for the greys to hone the craft and feed? It seems like greys can sort of grow up as well, becoming full reptilians, becoming tall whites or mantids, which would be a complete form change. Now, if that nest has a main spot where they all congregate, though, personally, I'd put my money on that spot being in the archipelago just off of Alaska, because there's over a dozen volcanoes there, which I bet are great as a natural unlimited energy source, if you're smart enough to use it, which these would be. And I also think that because I've read that these aliens literally have a base there. Now, one thing we know is that in most UFO crashes, they believe in most UFO crashes that they're always greys, and that they've been out harvesting human parts, because a lot of the time the dashboards of the crafts are fucking splattered, mate, in human entrails, almost like the greys' icebox has been smashed in the crash and spread intestines and blood all over the windscreen that they've been collecting. But greys are known to be very deceptive, as I say, so they could just be hypnotising us to see perfectly scarred cows with no organs left, when in reality they've left a complex system of brushes and buckets labelled with a Sharpie simply as cow, and we see that then as a cow. But the jinn was seen to be deceptive to a degree, and the demons, and angels, if you remember them in a way, like maybe deceptive's the wrong word, but maybe more so obsessed with the literal or with semantics. Fairies as well, and gnomes, mate, they all lie. And the greys are telling us that they come from space, right? And if we know that they lie, why do we believe them that they've come from space? They are a kind of weird evidence in themselves for the existence of outer space and other planets. A weird evidence because we don't know if they are 100% real, but it's almost as if they want to say, oh, don't believe in the gnomes that come from underground. Don't believe the greys come from underground. They come from space. They come from space. Like they're trying to make us believe that space exists. Because it is, isn't it? It's an extra way to convince people that we exist on a spinning rock in the middle of nothingness. Now, we used to believe we could keep finding new places, and we'd send out madmen on boats, mate, to find these new places. But now we just look at a book or our cum-covered phone screens, right, and accept that there are a certain amount of countries and nothing else to see. It's mental, innit, when you think about it, really. Do you know what I mean? It is, though, innit? And that people just believe whatever they read. But that's all I can really tell you, because that's all I really know about the greys. So I reckon we'll call it a day there. Later on, we've got HDR and Jim will mix it on Threshold FM. Don't forget to listen to mine and Jimmy's other show as well, Truth Seeking. I'll fucking see you in a bit, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, man. If you enjoyed the show, give it a share online, share it in your Instagram stories from Spotify. Send it to a mate. Talk about it on social media. Tweet me, mate. Tweet me. When I get 2,000 followers on Twitter, I'll be doing a taxidermy giveaway. So, that's something for you, innit? That's a little something. @WorldAroundYou, same as the name of the show. I'll see you in a bit, mate.